Well, this is.
Johanna, are you ready?
Hold on, I'm almost ready.
Are you here? Whatever.
Are you shuffling?
I was waiting for you. And just like that, we're back. We are back. So, Johanna,
What?
this weekend, Labor Day weekend, I had a friend out over here. It was great. I actually had a really good time. It was a girlfriend who came out, who I haven't seen in forever, to visit me. And you know me, I don't get a lot of guests out here at all.
Well, you live in BFE.
I do. I live in the middle of nowhere, but it was nice to have it. But here's one thing that I noticed when she had left on Tuesday, and let me tell you, energetically, her and I are very aligned in a sense of we have a good time. We're respectful of each other. It's really cool to be among someone like that. But what I realized, and I talked to you a little bit about this, was how exhausted I was on Monday when she left. And I was like, I don't understand why I'm so exhausted, because I had nothing but a good time. And I realized that through the years I've been out here, I have done such little amount of interacting in the ways that I used to. And when I did the traveling, even when I went out to Comic-Con and all of that stuff, like I am an introvert, right? So I used to force myself to do like extrovert shit.
Yeah.
And for you, you're more of an extrovert. And so I get that energy of coming out of my shell when I'm with you, which is nice, but sometimes it's also exhausting, right? So my friend is a little bit in between both worlds. But what was interesting,
I am too.
yeah. But what was interesting about this trip was I was realizing not only was I giving that energy of that, but also when I go out, I push myself out of being introvert, meaning that I'm very aware of the people that are around me, whether it's at the food store, whether it's like, at a restaurant. I was always the person who would never really chat. But now if someone's close in proximity, I have no problem starting a conversation because that's how you get to know people and so forth. Yeah. But I didn't realize that I'm not doing it enough. I feel like there's been seclusion out here and a level of, wow, I think it's time for me to come a little bit out of my shell. I think I need to, not that I don't explore, but I explore a lot on my own. And I've always been the one who's been able to be single and just kind of do my own thing and be open. I like my me time a lot. But I thought it was really interesting that all of the amount of changes that I'm going through and how opposite you and I can be sometimes with the changes you've been going through, right?
Which have been gnarly.
Which have been gnarly for you. But it is really interesting to see the different dynamics of where we are, because there is kind of like a final chapter. I feel that if you are someone who's been single for a long time, you get overly comfortable with it to the point it's scary.
Dude.
Scary.
Well, okay, so two things. One, I equate what you're talking about energetically to drinking alcohol. Meaning if you're used to drinking every night, right? And I was that person a long time ago. You build up a tolerance, right? So your bandwidth increases. But if all of a sudden, if you spend a few years only having one drink a week and you try to go back to like a couple of days in a row, your body's going to be like, what the fuck? And it's going to take you down. But again, everything's bandwidth, right? So your bandwidth for holding space or holding other people's energy. I think that's part of your problem, not to diagnose you, but you know what I mean? But like, I know how you are and I know how you process around other people. And I think it's just a bandwidth issue. So yeah, you need to be around more people.
Yeah, I get so comfortable being on my own. I think it's probably a little bit of my trauma thing of escaping, and the only way I knew how to escape was through my head, right? I always it's not a
Isolation.
Yeah, it's what's so weird, and it is. I mean, you isolate yourself and have conversations with yourself, and I do, right? Like everyone's all, comes to the level of saying, "Oh, it must be lonely." And I said to you this when people say that to me, I struggle with that because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really know what loneliness is. I just want quiet. I want peace, and I'm always hearing something, right? I never feel alone. I can be alone amongst people where I feel um a little bit kind of out of them, like kind of like outer and not really part of the group. But I've never really truly felt like silence, darkness, alone. And I I try to resonate with certain parts of people with that, but it's really tough for me because I can't figure it out. So
I'll tell you, the most loneliest I've ever felt has been in a relationship.
oh sure. Sure.
And I've had lonely moments on the road because I was very isolated on the road, right? Over this
Mhm.
time because I was by myself, unless, other than when I was with you. And there was a time I connected with a few people that follow me. But I mean, I had lonely moments but that wasn't really loneliness. That was me craving connection, with other
Mm,
people.
yeah.
But the loneliest I've ever felt. And here's the thing, when you're lonely, it's a disconnection from self. So that's why you don't resonate with that, because you are very grounded in yourself, and so that's why. But I'm with you on the whole, like, it's so funny because you and I are opposites on so many things. And this year when I settled down, and well, I didn't really settle down, when I got back to San Diego, I was like, oh, I'm gonna start dating. And
Yeah.
so I started dating, and I met someone right away, and we dated for a few months. And that was great and a disaster all at the same time, whatever. And I dated some more after that. And now I'm like, ew, as if, get away from me. I don't want, I literally shut off all my dating apps, and I'm like, I don't want to be bothered. And guess what has happened? Everybody in the woodworks that has known me is coming out, and they're like, hey, how you doing?
Retrograde.
And I'm like,
Retrograde.
I'm okay. Like, what do you want?
When you yeah.
I don't want to date anybody. And so, I mean, well, most of those people that came back before Mercury or Venus retrograde. And so
Mhm.
it's weird. And so, like, I agreed to go on a date next month, but I pushed him out till October. I'm not going to be here too in my
Wait,
defense.
wait a minute. So you push someone. So let me-
He's probably
so
going to watch this too.
someone was interested in getting to know you or hanging out with you, and you pushed it to October. This is a priority thing. This is now like
Backstory. I've known this guy since I was a teenager.
okay.
So there's a couple of them that I have known since school age that have come back into my life. And this is one of them. So it's not like he doesn't know me already, but he doesn't know fully this version of me, right?
Right.
And
You're no
I
new
have
version, different you.
yeah.
Okay.
And so I made that clear. I was like, listen, I because he's been very expressive, and that's awesome. I love that, right? But at the same time, I'm like, don't romanticize me based upon who I used to be, because I'm not that person anymore. You have to get to know me, and I have to get to know you again. And so he tried to push to meet this week, but dude, I'm getting ready to fly, and I have 1,085 things going on. I'm closing a business. I literally closed my gym today. I closed my PO box.
You're going through big changes.
I'm ending like everything in my life. I'm flying to North Carolina to end things. When I go to Texas, there's another level of goodbye that's going to be coming there. And then I'm coming back to reroute. So I told him, I'm like, listen, you're reconnecting at me at a time where I'm closing everything out. So, I don't have time to meet you now. And then I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. And when I come back, I'm moving and starting a new chapter of my life, and kind of need a minute to get my feet on the ground. So I was like, you get October. And that wasn't a dig on him. And I told him that, like, don't take this personal. Like, I have to choose me right now. And that's me choosing me,
Mm-hmm.
So, but
it's an adult thing to do.
It really is. But at the same time, like, I had all these dating apps, and I did not know that when you pause your dating app, if you had hearted somebody, like if you had liked them, that they could still slide in. So I closed all my dating apps. I know.
Is it like a wormhole? I don't understand. Is it like this like back alley? Like, is it
just opened up?
Sounds like a mistress app.
Right. So here I am closing. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I'm not going to get any more messages. And all of a sudden it's like ding, ding. I'm like, where are these people coming from? How are they getting in? And it said, you like them, you like them. And I'm like, when did I like them? It was like months ago. Now all of a sudden they're coming back.
Yeah, I never really did. I'm not, listen, I did the bucket list. And first of all, I did the dating online thing twice. One was pretty early when I got divorced, just to see what's out there and, you know, how to interact, since it's been so long since I've been on a date.
Dude, it's horrible.
I chickened out. You remember that whole thing? Like I was at the tail because I was moving. I'm like, I'm moving. This is weird. I'm moving. And like at that point I knew I was moving. So what's the whole point? So I chickened out that one. And then when I had an experience up here, it was just too confusing. I am not an individual here who can go back and forth between individuals. So confusing people is really easy to be done.
Well, you don't have to date multiple people at once.
Well, no, but you know, I'm too conversational is where I'm getting at. Yeah. So anyone who would start a conversation, I'd be like, you know, and some of these dudes were super young. And I'm like, what is this, cougar alert? What's happening? Like,
dude,
I don't
they
even understand
love
this.
the older ladies.
I was like, no.
I can't.
And that was about what? 3.5, almost 4 years ago.
Was it that long ago?
So I do not entertain it. I just was like, this is, I tried it. It didn't work out. I'm done with it. I said I would never do it.
You met like a weirdo.
Yeah.
Who went to a little bit of extreme.
Yeah. It went from clinger to yeah, it was. But at least the difference between that, and there's nothing against that person, was that it was really quick, because I jumped into it after, you know, being really hurt. And I was like, I just got to see what's out there, because I have been waiting for so long to just, have something. Buffer. So it did help me to really pull off the Band-Aid going, oh my God, I was so not ready. Like, I need some massive healing to do. I got some inner child work to do. So it took accountability, and I saw so many patterns of why I ran. And people see this. It's not like you go through these experiences, and the only way you're going to learn them, and you state this all the time, is that we need relationships to bounce off one another. That's the only way we have the experience of being human, is to have those relationships. And if it's going to be unconditional, and, you know, I just, describe that a lot. Being unconditional means you just accept them 100% for who they are, what they are, and not take it to the level of, this is happening to me. So it's really an interesting thing as to what we tolerate. There's a lot of compromise with relationships or who you choose. And it's not just love, but love is kind of a big deal when you're older and you're going through this stuff. And it's like you said, it's terrible out there. It's a war zone. It's fun.
Oh my God. It's so bad. It is so bad. And I love honestly, I don't think I'm going to meet the person on a dating app. I don't. No. But it's been fun practice. Yeah.
I love how you're like, I'm out, and I'm like, I think I'm ready.
I know.
I'm gonna go. Like, I'm just gonna, now my being ready is different. Mine is, I'm open to friendships. I'm open to seeing people and getting to know them. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going online.
You're ready to do the dirty. You're ready to meet the guy. You're ready to have the partnership, the relationship. You just got to own all of it. It's okay.
Own it. No, I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with it. I said, I think I'm finally at the point where I feel ready. I'm like, I feel pretty good. In fact, I had a laugh this morning. You and I have this weird connection with certain artists that we listen to. Now, Johanna and I do not have the same music taste. I just want to point that out. But there are some very big glory moments in rock and roll and old country. And we learned this really quickly when we took the adventure of road tripping cross country to pick up my shit. And the one song we used to listen to all the time, do you remember what it was? Other than the Willie Nelson one, there was another one we listened to all the time.
The Gambler.
Yes, The Gambler. And I thought about it, because The Gambler really is love too, right? It's not just life. But you think about it.
It is a gamble.
You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
Yeah, you really do.
Kenny Rogers knew his shit.
No, for real.
Really.
And this is where I say, like, I think I sent you a TikTok on this. I might have, but when you do the level of healing that most of us are doing right now, I know at least that I'm doing, I know you're doing, it makes dating more challenging because you see the red flags so clearly and you're like, damn, I have boundaries and I have respect for myself and I love myself. I can't put up with this shit. And it's funny because I went on a few dates with this guy who super wealthy, have emotionally intelligent, like he checked a lot of the boxes, a little older than I liked, but I wasn't moving as fast as he wanted me to move. And I had a lot of crap going on in my life and he wasn't being patient. And so he ended it. And in doing so, he basically said the night before that, he said that I had too much respect for myself. I had too much respect for myself. And I was like, that's the best compliment anyone's ever given me. I'll take it.
You might as well take it, because any person, it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female, who calls you too much, it just means they can't do the tolerance of what you can maintain. And so I just take it as, it just is what it is. But it doesn't mean that you can't do that, right? You can't provide for yourself, because it's not high maintenance to us. Certain things in our life, what we want, it's like, no, I maintain myself. I maintain my own crap. I don't need an individual. Codependency is a really big deal. And I like being in a relationship. I like the parts, of having a person to confide in and be a confidant to. And I think that's important to feel that. But I have never really truly felt it in the level that was authentic to me, because, I was more concerned about the other person rather than, really knowing myself. So that's evolution. I think people just kind of figure out. And I was definitely a late bloomer in life. I wasn't someone who focused on certain things in my life. And it had a lot to do with how I was raised and what I was brought up around. And, I was a kid at heart. So it was all about comics and Dungeons and Dragons and playing games, But, you think there are certain qualities that are great. Like I was always thought, I'm like, oh, I'm going to end up with a gamer, because, gaming is what I love to do. But then, you feel that and you're like, no, not that attractive. No. It's not always that, because, there's other things in this reality. I actually want to play in this reality. I love playing and working together, but I also love this reality of just getting to know what's around me. And I wasn't doing enough of that. I used a lot of my video games as escapism, because I wasn't getting the stimulation of what I really wanted to do, because I felt bad leaving the house or, going somewhere. And it's like, you run into those ruts with people, right? just do anything, even friendships, we hold on to them long. We've talked about that too in our past one, but it's really interesting because now that I've opened up of those areas of what we're doing, I also realized that I was starting to get certain things, because, once you're open to stuff, you start seeing certain things come on there. But I had a laugh because I was starting to get all things of how to attract certain people. And some of the stuff people are doing to attract makes me laugh. They're and these are theories that people are doing. So one of them is the triangle look, the reading of what women have been doing. They call it kind of the Marilyn Monroe thing, that you can stare at an individual and you kind of look at their left eye, and then you look at their lips, and then go back up and look at their right eye, and then you go across to create a triangle. And it's supposed to be really seductive.
Oh my God.
So people are doing this. They're looking up and down, and I'm like, what is happening? They look crazy. I was like, I don't think that's attractive. I think it looks distracting. What is noise?
What are you doing?
I'm like, these are the tip people are giving of reading individuals. What is happening?
No, I make serious eye contact.
Right.
I am always looking in someone's eyes. The eyes are the window of the soul. And if I'm looking at them in the eye and they're moving their eyes away a lot, they don't want to be seen. They're not at a space where they're ready to be with someone like me. That's my gauge number one. Can you sit and make serious eye contact with me? And we're good readers anyway. We don't, but some of these people, I don't know, dude. People are weird.
Listen, I'm a good reader when it comes to body language. And, I can read a person without actually reading, in an intuitive way. I can just usually feel the vibe of someone's energy. But that is something based upon feeling safe that I used to do. So it's a learned way of how I used to read.
I say the best readers are the ones that grew up with trauma, because we had to learn to read the vibe of the room, the vibe of what was coming, the vibe of the person, without knowing that we were reading them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it does come in that level where you look at that, but sometimes I question it, and until I really learned my gifts as into how it was my own dictionary of how it felt. What's my gut?
Yeah.
And I always tell the people, because everyone's like, oh, when you're so intuitive, you just know the right move to make and you go in the next level and you just know. And I'm like, it's not as simple as that, because we're constantly practicing, learning ourselves, and we are constantly changing. So some things come up in a different variant of us that maybe we weren't ready to really fully feel or see. So even though you're intuitive, doesn't necessarily mean that you're always intuitively inclined to see what your path is. I think if that was the case, we would be just enlightened,
No,
we
I
wouldn't go
always
through anything like that.
Because here's the thing. Okay. When you are me and you're going on a date and someone says, what do you do for a living? Depending on their level of awareness, which I do read them to figure out their level of awareness, because I don't know them real well. So I have to read them to go, okay, how can I say this? Majority of the time I will say I'm a psychic medium, because most people know what the hell that is. Right. Mm-hmm. But the very first thing there's two things that always happens. One, will you read me? No, it's an automatic no. And two, yes. Well, they get so curious. Oh, will you read me? I'm like, no. And then two is like, basically, why are you divorced? Why, whatever, this, that, like, how come you didn't know what was coming for yourself? And I'm like, we are pretty blind to our own life. We really are, because the whole thing is, and not that it's set up that way. In a way it is, because we're meant to play the game like everybody else. And that's what people forget. Like, we are meant to live a human life and play the game just as you. And so we're really good at guiding other people, and our own intuition is meant to guide us. But when we get into a relationship, especially when you start to have feelings for someone, especially and when you start in the beginning, when you have feelings for somebody, there's an attachment, there's a block, because you're craving something, you're wanting something, you're desiring something. That creates an immediate block. And so you don't see clearly. Love, the reason they say love is blind is because it fucking is. Yeah,
it can be right in front of you too. Yeah. And not being able to see it like at that particular time.
Like, but if you close your eyes, that's what happens. You can't see it. It sucks.
Yeah. I honestly feel that love is always around us. It's just this level of how open we want to be to it, and
how much we allow it to intoxicate and manipulate our energy field too.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're looking at that. But like, even like when I said I was tired, I was going through it, I was like, I just feel like I need to be more open with, and I am, but it's very different when I'm constant. Listen, I work from home. I do everything from home. I'm online. This is what I do. I do this. This is my comfort zone. I can get really comfortable. I can look amazing up top, and then the bottom I'm wearing fucking sweatpants and chill. All right. I am a home right there. I am a home buddy. I'm definitely a home buddy. And I force myself out. I force myself to go places. I force myself to talk to people. And that is something that I did at a very early age because of how shy I was, because I knew I wasn't, it was keeping me in this level of feeling small. Right. And so I was working on that level. So it's an endurance thing. And I realized my endurance for people is so bad now. So bad. It's just
it's not the same.
I gotta work this up again. I was like, holy shit.
You're online and you're in meetings and you're doing this and you're doing that. But it's different when you're in someone's energy field. It's a whole nother level. And there's a different level of exchange. Like, so a lot of you guys know that I used to have a business with Ashley Pfeffer, and I'm staying in her house right now. She's one of my closest friends next to Tanya. Like, Tanya and her are the two closest people. Anyway, whenever her and I come together, even though we talk all the time, when we're in person, there's like a massive energy transfer that happens. And the same thing happens when you and I are in person. Like, we don't always feel it right away, but when we separate, one of us is always dead exhausted, or like there's always some after effect. And it's just always that way. So when you get in person with somebody, there's always some type of energy exchange happening, even if you have excellent boundaries and and it's moving through you, you're always receiving something that is for you, and they're always receiving something that's for them. So it's a different experience than online stuff. It just is.
It is. And it's definitely my comfort zone. So I try now to I like to use FaceTime or Marco. I need to see people or look at this level. And, COVID kind of opened us up to that where, it's like, that's all we had. But, to me, I was like, oh, it's a perfect world. I don't have to do anything. Even having a conversation with my girlfriend who came to visit, she called an old friend that we used to work with, and he knew pretty much. He knows how I used to be, but he knows an older version of me, like 25 plus years ago. And we were talking, and he's like, how the hell did you end up north? You were an island baby, and so I was telling him some of the stories. I mean, I loved going to the islands. I was always the one, that's just where I was.
Damn snow.
But that was something that, they were used to seeing me go, and he saw me go to Cayman Islands, which was my dad's place at the time when he had it. So I was, I was spoiled with that, but I didn't, it's weird to see a different version of me when I'm talking to someone who knows an older version of me, like you said, with that dude.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of like, you're trying to explain yourself, and they're like, well, I live this. Well, do you do anything in the winter? He's like, are you a snowmobiler? And I was like, no. And he's like, what do you do? I'm like, I
sit in my house, feed the deer.
I talk to dead people. What am I supposed to say?
Drive-through.
Yes, I talked to a deer. I have a deer drive-through. I 100% did. I did befriend a deer. I think I miss her too. But she had her part. So she just, there's certain things where we know it's an end of cycle, and I think it was her way of saying like it's motherfucking time to get out of this house. Like, don't stay home just for me.
What are you going to do this winter that's going to be different this time? Because you do need to get out.
I am.
Are you going to do?
So my biggest thing this winter is I haven't seen my family. I haven't had a holiday with them in 4.5 years. So that's my November. Wish me luck. I might need recovery.
Are you going to Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Oh, yay.
So I'm going to hang out with my family, and it's a big deal because, family time is weird for me because I grew up in a house where we were divided. So I was shuffled around a lot. Like you spend time with your dad here and you spend time with your mom here. But I honestly resented it a lot as a kid because I just wanted to play with my shit, especially when it was Christmas. It was like, no, I just want to, so, but everything's
present that.
So Thanksgiving kind of became my, I'm not doing anything. I host Thanksgiving. I do everything. And my ex and we used to just stay there. We invited people if they wanted to come. Friendsgiving was a big deal for me. I love Friendsgiving where, it's kind of like the second Thanksgiving, like the second breakfast. So I'll cook out the next day. I love doing the Friday thing with my friends and stuff. And I did that up here. And it was great. But at the same time, it was like, I have not been in my family's energy for holidays in 4.5 years.
Oh, girl, you better start working out that energy field.
Let's see how it's going to be.
You need to start hanging out with some friends up there or meeting some people and kind of stretching that bandwidth.
Yeah. And I have made those things, and I've made some additional things here, even with some of my friends out here. I said, hey, we're going out at least twice a month. Yeah. I don't care if it's to this or not. We actually marked it in our calendar.
I gotta work it out.
Rachel and I were sitting there with their calendar. We're like, all right, we're going to figure this out.
That's so good.
So, so that kind of stuff I'm going to do. And I'm definitely going to I've decided that this winter, because I tried the snowshoeing before and it failed because I'm fucking short. And apparently I don't know how to walk in them.
I would just sink. I swear to God, I would sink.
So they have snowshoe groups out here. And I decided that I'm going to join one and just try this snowshoe group, which is.
I think you should just get a snowmobile and just go blazing through the forest.
I think
what's funny? I know. I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to talk over you for a second. The guy I dated, we'll just call him Jordan. He actually goes to Ironwood, Michigan to snowmobile in the winter.
It's big out here.
But when he told me that, I was like, what are the odds that it's Ironwood, Michigan? That's where my best friend lives.
It's
He's
a
like,
really small
what?
town.
Really? I was like, yeah. I was like, what are you doing there? Like, you couldn't find another town? Like, come on. It was so weird. I had to tell you that.
That is really weird. It's one of the biggest areas though for snowmobiling and stuff like that. I like to hike. I'm a walker kind of individual. It's not that I don't mind the snowmobiles and stuff. I think I would probably have fun down the road. I would probably get one, but it's not like my favorite. I don't think I could be like, I need to do this. I'm more of the hiker because, you know, I'm a photographer. So like, I like to have my camera with me and just, you know,
I'm not a
so
photographer,
it's,
but I do like
you
that.
can't really quite do that while you're snowmobiling.
I mean,
you know? You could do flybys, I guess. I don't know. People
would
are
be
flying
irritated
on
with me because I'd be like, I gotta stop and take a photo.
yeah, whoever would probably go with you would be annoying. But they actually have groups out here that do that. So I said that I was going to join it, even if it's just a couple, to see how it is, you know. And it's exercise, so it will be good for me. But that depends on the winter. That really depends how much freaking snow we're going to get.
You can do it no matter what.
Yeah.
I'll challenge you. At least one time. I want to see you out there snowshoeing.
I did it once, and I was horrible. It was horrible. I rented my own. No, it was just a terrible experience. I went by myself. I was doing the whole, I'm independent. I can go on my own. And the guy showed me how to use them there. And so I just rented them.
That's a terrible idea.
And then I was like, I was completely out of my element. I'm like, this is not fucking Jersey. Like, this is terrain. This is not like
Kansas anymore, Toto.
I was like, I can't just hike in the woods by myself. Like, there's too much. What was I thinking?
In the winter with snow.
How did I think this was a good idea?
Oh my God.
You know? And then I got the paranoid of like, is there a bear? Is there like something going to attack me? And then I'm like, but does my phone even work? Like, this is the stuff that like, because I just went out there.
You need to know that because there's a lot of places out there where you don't get service.
No, there's nothing out here.
So
and
you need to get a satellite phone.
I do. Yeah. I do.
You should have one of those. You should add it to your apocalypse cabinet.
Listen, that apocalypse cabinet has really died down. It's not nearly also half of it.
Processed food central. And it's like, if you had to survive on things like that, fine. But she's got it. So I was like, you know what? If we ever hit apocalypse, I'm just heading to Michigan.
Well, and I actually buy apocalypse food. I buy some of the canned stuff that are from the survival sites. So I have all of that. And it lasts much longer. But when, you know, everything hit, you know, I have a thing with food, you know, that's like my thing because it's like, and it's horrible because I never remember. Do you do this? Like, you're like, oh, I don't have any of this. And then you come home, like my pepperoncinis. I'm obsessed with pepperoncinis and I'm always have 2 in there. And then I come home thinking I only have 1. And then I have like 4 jars in there. And I'm like, oh, here's another pepperoncinis. And then I'm like, why do I have 10 jars of pepperoncinis in my house with 1 person? But I constantly have extras of stuff. And then when I had a lot of people living here, I don't like to run out of shit. So I'm always like, you got to have a double. You got to do this. But now I only do 1 double. So if there's anything more of that, because I don't eat that shit. It's my safety stuff. And you knew what happened when I had a friend here who was watching my animals when I went away. I made all of this. I made really nice dishes, you know, and I froze all the meals and everything.
She ate all the junk food.
She ate all of the processed shit. And then and she's like, thank you so much for the food. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was really insulted because I was like, I hope she doesn't think that like, ew. Really snotty about it. And so I was like, that was the apocalypse cabinet. She goes, no, it was nice. It was comforting. It was nostalgic.
Oh my God.
She's like, it had like mac and cheese and shit in there. I was like, well, it's true. Like I have ramen noodles in there and some mac.
Like some ramen. So the nomad, well, let me go back. When I left my husband, when I got divorced, that was my beginning stages of breaking food as my safety. Because I used to spend easily $1,500 a month at the grocery store when I was married with kids and dogs and all the things. Yes, kids, teenagers eat you out of house and home, but honestly, we didn't need all that much food all the time. And my kids probably wouldn't have eaten it all if I just scaled back. But it was when you grow up in trauma, when you didn't have food all the time, which was my case, when you have money, you're like, I'm going to be at the grocery store like every day buying shit. And, you know, it becomes a safety. So when I moved out onto my own, I only bought a week's worth of food at a time. And then
Mm-hmm.
that prepped me. How did I know that that was coming? Because my intuition always, but it's like I'm always ahead of myself. So that was like my practice, because when I became a nomad, you can't take a pantry with you.
Yeah.
You know, I have
No.
one box that's sitting right next to me that's got like my favorite oils, like my sesame oil, and when I make stir fry, and my organic seasonings, because that shit's expensive and I'm not replacing that every week. So,
Or
but I have
vegetables, like
I have
good
one little
vegetables.
tub, but I can only buy enough for like
Yeah.
4 or 5 days of food at a time. That is it. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's not even, I can only do 3 days. So it really shifted. But it is, when I don't feel safe, you'll catch me. I'll be at the grocery store. I might not even buy anything, but I'll be at the grocery store, because it's just, it's what the thing is. But it's really healed that part of my safety, and allowed me to feel like I can always, I will always be okay. I don't need to have all of that anymore. And so, but that was a hard one for me to break. And I was like you, I always had a case of cup of noodles, because that was my thing with my grandma. My grandma always had cup of noodles for us as a kid, and I loved cup of noodles. So that was like one of my safety things. Certain foods, I always had some of that, and plus my
Mhm.
kids still eat processed crap. You know, they have to choose for themselves too, and so I don't carry any. I don't have any of that. You know, so it's just
different.
it's weird to break that, but yeah, I had that too.
And your eating habits change too. Like I don't eat nearly. I mean, when you're on your own, I love to cook for an army, and I
Well,
miss
yeah,
it.
me
I,
too.
I miss cooking for an army. So I will cook a zillion for other people. I was cooking for people out here. I cook for my neighbors and stuff like that. And it is healing, but at the same time, it's also very like, like I can't. I don't not. I'm cooking for people because I love cooking, and half the stuff I wasn't eating myself because I know what other people like, and
I'm
they
the
could do
same
that.
way.
So then I stopped doing that. I was like, you know what? I'm more infusing the food that I like. And I have started doing that, where it's like a good meal that I feel is, up to standards. I'll share it now with people around me that I love. If they don't like it, they don't like it. But it's like, at least I know I'll eat some of it and I'll keep the rest in my freezer, because I was just giving food away. I was like, why am I making all this food? And all I kept thinking of was my mom, because when I was younger, oh my gosh, I had this thing with my neighbors where they were so nice. These neighbors they were super nice. And I always felt like we fell short. Like they were like the Christian racer kind of family, very, very religious, but just very nice people. And then there was my house, who I felt like was the hoodlum house, even though, it just, I always felt like when I was hanging out with those kids that I was kind of looked upon as the rebel or someone here who wasn't religious. So I tried to do gestures, and I had this thing where I wanted to make them brownies, and my mom had bought brownie mix for the family.
Please tell me you
And
made them pot brownies.
so no, it wasn't pop brownies.
Damn
But
it.
anyway, so I made the brownies here for the family, and my mom, and I spent all day making these brownies. They were like from scratch kind of thing, and I was young. And it was this big fight between my mom and I because, she was like, "Oh, you made brownies for the family." And I was like, "No, I made them for the neighbors so they'll like us." So they'll like us. And my mom's like, "What the fuck? No, we're not feeding the fucking neighbors. Like, they get the Entenmann's. Like, we're feeding them the good brownies."
Entenmann's, dude, that was like high class back in the day. You
But
don't give away the Entenmann's.
yes, well, to her, like she had a specific thing, what she gives away or whatever. But anyway, the fact was, I tried to make it for the entire family, and my mom ended up throwing it in the trash because she was so angry at me. But I do have that in me where I feel I have to give something to feel like it's a guilt or shame thing. I don't know what it is.
Trauma, man. Fucking
Yeah.
trauma.
It's so bizarre.
I'm the same way. I absolutely love cooking. So, everybody knows by now I've been married 3 times. My second husband, my second husband, when I met him, he had 4 kids, and then I had one, and then we ended up having one together. So we had our own little baseball team, and it was honestly one of the best times in my life because I cooked all the time, and I got to make huge meals on an average date night dinner. Like I was like, our house we bought had the big bay window kitchen, it's like a huge island. The kitchen is the reason why we bought the house, and is because of the amount of cooking I did. I cooked for parties. I cooked for the holidays. I was always the one who did all of the holiday meals after my grandma stopped doing it. Yeah, but I loved it. And it's like you, a lot of what I cooked, I did not eat because I've always eaten differently than everybody else. But I miss that part of being in a relationship. I miss that part of having my own home, which is where
Yeah,
I
home's a
can
big deal.
cook and I can make things. And, you know, so that's what I'm working on calling in like you, I want to start cooking things that I'm going to eat
Yeah,
and
I was a pretty
experimenting and
big
stuff.
well, I'm a Libra, so I was actually a pretty big socialite when it came to parties. I love parties. My sister was a big party person in the beginning too. And so when she got kind of tired of it, it was kind of like pass the torch to me. And she gave me all of her party shit and was like, well, you have a house now, so now you can do this. So I have so much stuff for entertaining, but I'm such an energy snob now that I just don't invite like regular people in my house in a level that way anymore. And you know, I do, and I am a really good hostess. I just am. It's in tune to me. I know how to, and it doesn't matter if it's one person, 10 or 100. It really doesn't matter. I will treat them all the same when it comes to hostess. I am exhausted after I host.
Yeah.
But I've also learned the tricks here of what to do. Have you done this? Is like preparing the food, because I do stuff from scratch.
Me too.
You know, you kind of do all this stuff ahead of time so you can kind of relax and do that. But
as much as you can, but there's always
as much
those
as you
dishes
can,
that you can't do that
you
with,
can't.
you know?
You can't, because you're catering yourself unless you get a caterer to do that. But
I've had people tell me
I
that
do
if
miss
I
it.
ever needed to start over, that I should become a party planner, because I am obsessed with like decor and setting and making sure everything is like the ambiance, and then the food and everything has a theme, and I've planned a bazillion parties for myself. And so, and I've thrown people parties, and people always like, who catered this party? Like, who planned this party? I was like, me. They're like, well, can you do mine? I'm like, no.
Well, you know, I was an event photographer, and let me tell you, a lot of times what happens with event photography is you also, which is sad because there's people here who have positions for this, but people are cheap and don't want to get an event planner. So the photographer, especially on weddings, becomes the event planner because they don't have fucking any idea what they're doing. Right. So you have to help them, give them the suggestions of what the time is and stuff like that. A lot of them are like, we've never done that before. We don't know. Can you guide us? Because they're not getting that full effect unless they hire somebody, if it's a reception and stuff. So you kind of jump into that role. But that's actually how I learned most of my cooking, was because I was hanging out with all these top chefs and caterers. And I'd be like, oh, how'd you cook it? Because I mean, on my break, I was in the back. I was with the kitchen people.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, you make these amazing dishes, I'm like, dude, I was amongst some of the most amazing chefs all around the East Coast on some of these weddings. And they have top chefs for some of these wedding events, you know, where they're catering to. So I definitely am a foodie for sure.
All I know is this past birthday, I wanted to do this. And so my goal is to do it for my next birthday. Is I want to rent a venue. And they're actually in San Diego. There's a place where you can do this, where it looks like fairyland, where there's like, you think like almost like, oh God, Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat, like, you know, kind of like those kind of themes. But I want to do a fairy themed birthday party where everybody comes dressed up as a fairy, wings and all, like to the nines, in your like full paint, like full makeup. And just because a lot of my friends out here are not like me, right? There's a few of them who are in this realm, or that are aware, that are, you know, spiritual or into this kind of thing. But most of them are just regular people living their regular lives. And I think it would be really fun to kind of bring them into my world in a playful way and just do that. But mainly because I want to do that, but I think it would be fun to bring them into that kind of thing, you know?
Well, you know me, I love cosplay.
But I want to plan that. I'm like, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this. I'm like, crap, this is going to be expensive.
I love, you know, anything where it's dressing up or cosplay, and I will probably 100% be the dark fairy in some way.
I would expect nothing less.
Nothing less to be the dark fairy.
But I want to do that. And so, like,
party, probably a little steampunk.
Yes, but bringing it back to relationships, like, so my birthday, I'm usually, the week of my birthday usually is always a emotional week for me. I don't know why birthdays have always sucked in my world. but I've always also made a big deal about it. So like I went through a phase where like the whole month of July was like Johanna's birthday month, and I, did fun things all month.
Birthday months, yeah.
And then it went down to a birthday week, and then this past couple of years, because I've been on the road, it's been like whatever, it's just another day. You know what I mean? It's kind of sucked. But this past one, not counting because I got to go to Morgan Wallen, but like I want to be with somebody who makes a bigger deal about my birthday than I do. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's not, because that's who I am. And when I have the ability to, I always listen to what people like, what they need, what they want. And I find those things and I surprise them with it on their birthday. Sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's not, but it's things that I've listened to and I've observed. I'm like, oh, they would really love this. And I usually buy it.
Good gift giver.
Well, like I bought Tanya the R2D2 toaster,
which is the best. I use it every day.
Oh my God, it's so cute. When you do it, it makes a little noise. It's so fun. But I ordered that bitch like 4 months ahead of time because it was on back order and I knew it wouldn't make it in time if I didn't like way order it. But it's like those kinds of things. Like even my ex-husband, he's like, damn, like, how did you remember that? Or how did you find that? I'm really good at finding things. So to me, it's like, I'm basically, when we're looking for somebody, we're looking for the opposite, like the opposite sex of ourselves. I'm looking for a male version of me, basically. And you don't think that that's what you're needing, but it really is. Like when you're looking at your soulmate, you guys are going to be a lot alike. You're going to be a lot alike. And so I want somebody who's going to make a really big deal about my birthday and who is going to be love that I'm obsessed with Christmas and want to spend Christmas from October to February.
And watch a lot of Hallmark. I mean, Hallmark, I'm going to put a disclaimer. She loves Hallmark.
I love me some Hallmark. So
I have a Hallmark quota. I like it, but like once after a while, I start seeing the same cast. I'm like, come on, Johanna, like, didn't we just see this movie? You're like, no, it's a different movie. It's just the same cast. I'm like, what? I don't understand.
It's been harder. This is the sucky part, is the past couple of years, it's been harder to watch because the more aware I become, the more I'm just like, oh, this is not engaging to me, but I don't want to lose it because I very much like the human experience and it's just something I enjoy. And so I'm like, I hope it doesn't completely go away, but I'm sure it's just a phase. But I don't know, that's what I'm looking for. But it's been interesting, the people coming back into my life and the people showing up for you and all the things. The thing that I've noticed the most is, and not just romantically, like friendships, family members, all of these things, you really start, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you really start to realize that you completely live in another dimension than other people when they start talking about stories and events that happen and you're like, what? I don't remember that. Like the Mandela effect, right?
Yeah, the Mandela effect of it. Yeah.
When you shift, and when you shift into, we can call it a timeline if you want, but really it's you moving into a different frequency, like a radio station. That's what you're doing. You're moving into a different frequency. And then you see that person, you can still interact, right? Because it's all the frequencies are here at the same time. But I've had so many discussions where people are telling me memories of times when we hung out, and I'm like thinking in my head, that never happened.
That's interesting.
I don't remember that ever happening. Or like full conversations, and I'm just like, what? Like, no. And this has been going on and off for the past 2 years, but this year it has been wild how intense it's been, where I'm just like, damn.
Do you just say that's not my reality, or how do you handle it when people are talking about it? Do you question it? Are you questioning it like how you just said to me, or is that coming in your head?
It's more of a, it's, so when I, like today, for example, there was one, and I was like, I didn't even say anything back. I'm like, did I forget that happened? Am I blocking it out? So I contemplate because I don't want to automatically just brush it off. So I kind of sit with it and I feel into it, but I had no resonance for it at all. And I was like, okay, well, that happened in their reality, and that maybe I wasn't, there is a version of me that wasn't that reality. And because I've shifted, I'm no longer in that frequency. So I'm not going to be able to access that. But plus, not to get too technical and energy updatey, but the state of where we are as we record this, we're not holding things anymore the same way we did. So it's like, if it did happen, I let go of it and it's no longer. And usually you have a memory, you can recall it, right? I'm not recalling things anymore like I used to. And that's something new.
You're not
It's
holding
like,
on to it.
No, it's like, I used to have this big, the guides call it the algorithm of the past, where you're like, you have this file flex where you're kind of going through and you're like, oh, memory. And so someone would say something and you kind of recall it and it all comes flooding back. That's not happening anymore. It's like,
That's
not
because it goes back to the gambler. You got
I'm
to
telling
know
you.
when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away, and you got to know when to run.
Or hit delete, whatever.
Or hit delete, whatever it is,
But it's just been a trip because I'm like, I have not, there's only one person where I said to them, and that was my mother. And I said, we are living on different planets. And that's all I can tell you. Like, we're literally on different planets. I do not recall ever having that conversation. It has no resonance with me. So if you remember having that conversation, fantastic. I do not. Period.
Agree to disagree.
There's no way around it. What are you going to do? Like, there's no proof. Was there a photo? Is there a video? No. So I don't know what to tell you. But it's just one of those things that is been a wild it hasn't like been weird. It's weird, but it's just been a wild observation. The other thing is, this is kind of a little off subject, but not really. I have been seeing so many with like, because I see with my eyes open. I don't really necessarily see with my third eye. I see with my eyes open, but I'm seeing people. Normally I'll see them, come and they'll fade back out. But I'm watching people almost like Harry Potter style walk through things and disappear. Like we're in a train crossing and like Harry Potter.
Those are shifts.
And I'm watching it all the time. And I'm like, dude, am I like finding all the Grand Central stations of the spirit world lately? Like, what's going on?
I have a lot of that
everywhere.
I have a lot of that from the side view. So I'll get things where I feel like something's I told you the one time I had in my own house where I felt like what I was actually in the house with was a version of me. Cause like I was looking for something and I bumped into something and I felt it was me. Like it was weird. I've had these, but then, when you spend so much time alone, you start feeling a little crazy. But I remember I called you and I was like, listen, and it was something, and I think you mentioned it on the show one time too, was I really thought I woke up and I got ready for work and stuff like that. And then it was a dream of me getting up and getting ready. It was so a reality of me doing it that I woke up and I was like, wait, no, I just did this, but I dreamt about it. And now I'm doing it again. Like what is happening?
I've had that too. I think we did talk about that on another show. Cause I had the same thing. I think it was the same day or the day after. Like we both had similar experiences that were different, but the same thing. Yeah. I just trip too.
I feel like the veil is just really thin with that. And sometimes we just see those glitches, or what I call the glitch effects. Anytime where anything comes where people are starting to have the idea of different timelines, they'll start seeing glitches. They actually have a lot of this, they try to show proof of it where people say they see doubles of stuff, but they actually have double material possessions. So, let's say this earbud case where it's something here where they've only have one of, and then they're like, oh, I misplaced it, but it has a scratch on it. And then they find another one with the exact same scratch. And they're like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
Where this, and so a lot of people are trying to debunk it, saying people are doing that and buying extra things and putting it on. But I do believe that kind of stuff happens. And even when you look back at some of the weirder shit, when, if you get really down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, with historical stuff where people have found things like deep down in the pyramids that should not have been in that timeline at all, and question why would it be down there, or things in that level, or even when they have drawings with the Aborigines, looking at things that look like they're almost alien-like.
Yeah.
With some of the drawings, it's like, what are they seeing? What are they drawing? Is that just, why would they be able to draw something that is so similar to what, some of the things that we are seeing? So,
well, I think a lot of them were scribes and prophets who saw things. And, a lot of the drawings, those came from scribes. That's their way of documenting history. So things that they saw. So, and I think some of those people saw, and I wouldn't necessarily call it into the future, but I just think that I don't even have the right words, the right human words, but in my world, in my reality, when I talk to my guides, we don't have a veil anymore. Now we each have a personal veil, but the collective veil has been gone for quite some time. And I think that back then, we think about Atlantis and we think about, the times of Egypt and Greece and all of these big historic events that have been done. I think they saw and knew a lot more than we give them credit for. I don't think it was, I think that their ability, this is so interesting. Their ability, because I try not to be in channel mode when we do this, but it's like what the feeling I get is like they had the ability to see and were more open than our human brain at that time. And if you look back, a lot of their heads were shaped differently. Their capacity, I think, to see etherically and see more than one timeline was already, I feel like they had that already. That makes sense.
It does. I mean, I think that it's just showcasing the different realities of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily
because technically it's happening right now, right? Everything's happening at the same time. So how could they not, right, have access the same way we have access? Otherwise, how would these people who are like you and I, who go on these big meditative journeys, how do they pull stuff out there that they wouldn't know, right? So they're doing the same thing with us. I just feel like everything's happening at the same time. We can all access it. And when you go into physical mediumship, one of the abilities of physical mediumship is apports. You have the goo. I can't think of the name.
Ectoplasm.
Yes, thank you. Ectoplasm. You have manifesting voice, which is what I have. There's apports where people can literally drop. You'll see it fall out of thin air. Literally, it won't fall. There'll be no, there's no hole in the ceiling. Something will fall. So if they can
I've
do
seen
that,
some records of that. That's been kind of creepy.
But they've been doing that for centuries. So how do you that's what I'm saying. Like they wrote and scribed things onto walls and stuff because they were seeing the same way we are. I actually think they had greater capacity than the humans of today in our reality.
I think the perception, though, is, and when we come up, if we reel it back into relationships, is that we really don't have the control of what other people perceive or what vibe they want to be in. Mm-hmm. So whether there's a veil or not, it's just a choice as what you choose to be in. Some people are going to be more fear-based. Others are going to, not allow certain things to bother them and not have those issues or not feel attached to it. I do feel detachment can have its woes as well. We can be too detached sometimes where it kind of takes the empathy away.
I think that's where I am right now. I'm in like that severe detachment.
I went through 3 years of it. 3 years I went through. I mean, when I moved up here and some of the stuff I experienced, I went to 3 years of detachment. My teenage rebel in me did not want to deal with anyone. It was a big fuck off to everybody. I mean, I know they say Libra right now is in their villain era, but I want to be like, I've really embraced the villain. I'm okay with being her. Like she's fine. But I can also have a softer side too, and it would be nice to see her again. So
that's what I want. I'm going into my soft girl era.
It will happen.
But let me ask you this. I know we're getting close, but let me ask you this. Because I think you and I have talked about this, but do you want somebody who is similar to you, as in like in romantic relationship? Are you looking, or have you thought about, do you want somebody who can also read or is in the spiritual conspiracy, like who is similar to us? Because I want someone who's self-aware and who's emotionally intelligent, but I don't necessarily want them to be like me because I really want the groundedness. But you're really grounded. So I want to ask you, do you want or care if that person is in the same realm as us?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I like to be challenged. So I think it's much nicer for me to be able to have the conversations where someone can challenge me. Do they have to be the same as me? No. But am I against someone being in the realm as me? No. It's kind of comforting to know that you're not going through all this shit alone, or when you talk about some wacky shit. And I have certain belief systems that it's like no, if it's this way, I don't feel comfortable, right?
Right.
But I do feel parallel or same experiences are really important to me. And I think, I think back of my favorite relationship, and it wasn't a romantic relationship, was with my friend Tanya. We had a lot of parallels, and that was something that really helped me feel a little bit more in line. Yeah, it was like a same thing. So it was just in line. I was just, and it's not necessarily I was feeling alone. It was just like someone understands what I go through or this, because, when you try to talk about certain things in your life or what you're experiencing, it can be a really,
it's true.
It's just too much for some people. Right. And I get that. I 100% get it. But, I'm at the same level too, that I don't really feel they have to necessarily believe in the same thing. They definitely have to be open to my belief systems and reality, saying that it's my, my reality, and they respect it. Respect is huge. Yeah. You can't have a relationship without respect and loyalty. So those are huge for me. And communication. I like assertiveness and directness. I don't like bullshit. When we bullshit
I don't.
Stuff, I'm like, it doesn't work for me. And I understand I'm a very, I'm hard in my ways because I've been single so long. I know how to take care of myself. I know what I like to do, but I like also sharing those experiences. And I really haven't had a partner to really do that with in a full capacity that felt like, hey, I'm really interested in what you want to do, but not feeling like they have to be there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And I just been in so many of them where it was like, it felt forced. And I was like, listen, I don't want to have it forced that it should be a big deal if we want to go out to dinner,
Yeah.
Or if we want to chill and watch a movie, that would be great. Like, I think quality time is really important.
Oh, for sure.
And if you have relationships where the quality time is basically, one thing, I don't feel it's enough. I feel like it needs to be emotionally involved. I really like to get involved with, when I'm with a person that I feel comfortable with and what they love. But at the same time, if it just becomes all of that, then I have to step back. Then it becomes because, and I regretted this, but I did that. I tried to be something that I was not, and saying it was okay. And that's what I wanted, but I really didn't know that. I honestly was very naive in that level. It was very different for me because I don't have a lot of the same experiences as you. I've been mostly friends most of my life, and I really have one solid relationship to bounce. The rest really weren't anything to really talk about,
No, but like, I feel like the best is yet to come for you. And I feel like that
it could be
it
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that if nothing comes.
Oh,
my part is that I'm finally okay with saying, I think I'm ready, or I'm open to it. And I can be aware for it, or I can just be more sensitive to it. I won't be so shut down to things.
Yeah.
Or like, do they have an agenda?
Right.
But most of the time, the agenda part, when I said that, was on me. It was not necessarily on that person. It was just me projecting on it, because I most of the time was catching feelings for things because there was a part of me that I saw in myself. Right. And you always say that you see yourself in there. So when I would see that, it would scare the shit out of me, because it's like, and I was always the one who was assertive. If I saw something I liked, I got rejected, it was okay. At least I got it out of the way. And then there's something in later in my life where I stopped being the assertive person. And I think a lot of that was that level of, I want to be picked, like, just,
chosen.
Like picked.
Yeah. But I went through that too, because, you think about 3 marriages, I was the masculine in all of my, let's take my first one out of the equation. So most of my relationships, I was the masculine, and I was the one who initiated. I was the one that led the relationship. And I just am not willing to do that anymore. And I want to be chosen. I'm very balanced. So there's going to, my business, that my creativity, that kind of stuff for me, that's more of my action, my masculine. I am a very strong alpha female, but in a relationship, I want to be led. I want to be protected. I want to be chosen. I want to be cared for. I want them to make decisions for the relationship for me. Not always. There's always going to be a balance where we're going to swing back and forth, but I want that. And I've never had that. And so if a man comes into my life and they they can't plan a date and they can't be assertive and they can't take the action, it's not going to go anywhere. And I might flirt back and entertain it because I got one of those going on right now too. But I know it's not going to go anywhere because, like, listen, I'm just not going to go down that road again, you know? And so it's hard because I don't want someone who's like me, but at the same time, you're right. It makes it easier when I'm explaining to why I have a headache when it's a full moon and all the planets are in retrograde.
You're not going to question it. They're just
Right.
going to be like, all right, do your thing, boo.
You know,
they're not going to question it.
And they're like, why do you have a headache? I'm like, it's a full moon. They're like, so? And I'm like, okay, let me give you a little intro, quick, fast lesson in Johanna real quick.
Spirituality aside, this is the important thing of even finding things you like. Like, I'm a huge geek and gamer, and some of the stuff I used to try to talk to, like, my ex would just be cross-eyed, be like, what the fuck? I don't know any of that world, right? And then I would get with my brother and be like, ah, and we'd be both in this world of talking shit, right? You have to have that engagement of,
they have to be interested,
right?
At the very least, they're curious.
And if it doesn't become that, or if it becomes heavy, then it becomes something where you're kind of forced on that. And listen, we both, and this wasn't just, and I only have him to really bounce off of, so I'm not putting him on the spot, because I did the same thing with him with sports, right? I used to love sports, and now I'm like, I can't stand sports, you know? And yeah. And I was just talking to another friend who was like, you probably would like it again, you know, if you were, you know, go into it at a different level. I said, maybe, I don't know. I said, it's not that I'm against it. I just like the idea of doing things together.
Yeah.
If you want to watch sports and I'm in the kitchen making something, as long as we're spending time with each other, I'm cool with that. Like, you can do your own thing. If you want to play a game with your buddies, fine, fucking do that. I'm not stopping you from doing it. I'm not clingy at all. I'm the opposite of that. So when I get
clingy.
Yeah. Well, if you get to the point where, if I were to get to the point where I was clingy, and I was clingy at one point, I was clingy on a friendship, which was horrific, because I never thought I'd be that person, and I did it. And that was a part where it really made me go, what the hell is going on? There's something more psychologically going on here. With this issue. And it wasn't just me, but when, like you said, when you're in it with a relationship, you don't see it. You think that this is what you got, rose color glasses. You're trying to save something. You're not looking at the bigger picture. This happens in relationships. This happens even with jobs, with things.
And people will tell you and you still don't believe them.
No.
Yeah. And that happens. And it's important, you know, part of the show is being human in the illusion, because we have to be human in our own fucking, you know, illusion. And then it's so mind-blowing, the human experience sometimes, but it also is such a game that, I don't know, it kind of hooks you and you're like, oh, and you hate it, but you love it at the same time, you know, and you're like, what's going to happen now? And what's this character going to do? And, you know, so I don't know. It's fun and it's miserable all at the same time. And I don't know, but I'm not closed to dating. I do want to find my person. It's just fucking exhausting. And
it is. You shouldn't have to be, it shouldn't be that exhausting.
I don't. And I was like, you know what? You know, if anybody's ever seen Under the Tuscan Sun, ladybugs, baby, ladybugs. And so what did I do? I stopped, and now I have ladybugs all over me. And, you know, we should apply the same. I need to apply the same thing with money. So it's like it's the same thing. Like it was like, I got to put it all down.
Vibe into.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to put everything down and be like, whatever's meant to, I'm going to open my doors and windows and come on in. And I'm going to be like, yes, fuck no. Yeah. You know, I'm just going to be like playing this game. And so that's what I'm doing. But I just have really high standards and now, and that makes it a harder process, but I'm freaking worthy of that, just as you are. And so I'm excited that you are open to dating and open to relationships, because I feel like I'm
open to getting to know people in a healthier way, because I now know the difference between, you know, when people are using me too, or when people actually want to be with me. I just cut out anybody who really wasn't vibing with me, or letting even like slow friendship size where they stop communicating. And like, that is the worst thing for me. Like, if I feel where I'm the one who's constantly reaching out, and it's those friendships or relationships where you're like, what am I doing? I'm always the one checking, or they're draining me. And I'm like, this isn't fun for me. And they're one-worded answers. If anybody, like, it's the biggest turnoff I have with anything. And that's why I hate texting. I actually don't like texting. I'm a face-to-face person. So I like FaceTime.
This is why
it's less energy for me, because
Right.
now we're just viewing each other. It's not so exhausting of
You can
guessing
see
who
your
someone is.
expressions.
Yeah. And it feels better for me than people trying to hide through things. And texting can always get so convoluted, and you can't read everything in there. You can't read emotions
No.
all time through it.
That's why I love voice notes too.
Yes, voice is also very important to me. So I like having those conversations and being able to hear somebody. So context of texting in any kind of relationships, if it's too much of that, fuck no, I'm out. No, I get like texting during the day. That's sweet. Check-ins. That's great. But, if it's something even where you're constantly saying, hey, we haven't hung out in a while or anything, you shouldn't be that person to do that 24/7. It's one thing to think of someone and doing that, but those relationships I'm done with.
And it's so important to recognize, because people get so triggered, when we end relationships, whether it's friendship or romantic or even family members. But here's the thing. If it's healthy for us, it's going to be healthy for you. Like, you're better off letting that friendship go. It doesn't mean that it will be forever. Like, it could come back around. But there are
I've had plenty of
times
that to do that.
where if one of us is feeling like this is done, it's not feeling good anymore, it doesn't feel like it's lighting us up, it's not serving the other person either. So take your space, grow, and come back together. Like, why does it the problem is people judge and they take shit personally. Like, those two things have to go. And it's not easy. I still have times where I take shit personal, but that's the things that have to go: judgment and taking it personal.
Taking it personal was probably one of the hardest lessons I have. Because for me, I was new on certain feelings that I was feeling. I didn't even know how to identify some of those feelings. So I was still learning that chart of me. And that's tough, because, when you start taking it personally, you get kind of the guilt or shame things, especially when I used to bring up my feelings to anybody, and this is not to tell people that they sucked or anything like that. I got knocked down a lot, or I was called too sensitive, or I was taking it too personally. And so I was just like, when you hear that, it makes your emotions feel like they're not allowed. They're not valid.
Yeah.
So, when someone does feel that, I always think that, they are valid. Like, I will let someone know, even a relationship ends, when I end any kind of relationship, for me to block a person or to do it, if it's especially hurt feelings, it's one thing to detach. But the ones that I feel that I could do the best that I could, I put everything that I could on there. I do thank them. Because if I didn't go through that experience, I want them to know that, hey, we met and there's a reason for it.
Right.
And thank you for it. And that's something
powerful.
That's just something I feel really strongly about, is that I do that. And it's not as hard as people think it is. You're like, oh, it's not easy to say that. Actually, it really is. Because if you can thank them, then you're thanking a version of you too. Because you're allowing that version of you to be appreciative, because they're not a bad person who selected that, who chose that. It might have been trauma. It might have just been a fling. Who knows? But it's different for what we perceive it.
Even if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you can't put it all on the narcissist. You're allowing it. And so there's a level of responsibility. You have to take ownership of your part. And the fact, like, when I did my healing of my relationship, I had to look and I saw the fucking pattern that went back to childhood. And I was like, whoa, that's my responsibility. It's to break that cycle, And so I think people, our feelings are always valid, but it's hard. People don't want to take any kind of ownership sometimes.
It is. And sometimes it goes, and you just got to be all right with it. But, I have really embraced that villain portion of me, going, I cannot control what people think of me or what it is, but I'm also not going to hide about it or to do it. And that's what I was doing a lot of times, afraid to run into things because of my feelings. And, this is kind of a safety thing, not just for me, but when there's other people involved. I'm protective of individuals I love too. And so when you see someone hurting those individuals, fuck no, I want to rip that person's throat off. Right. But I also know that I love those other people. So I'm not going to do that. Right. So it takes a lot of strength to reserve yourself and not get involved in shit or talk back. And I realize the strength of that now. And I watch people sometimes unfold and flip out and blame and blame and blame. And they just fucking give all their power away. And do you know what I do? I love them. But at the same time, the amount of pity I feel is sad, you know? And it's
I don't
like
pity because it takes people's power away.
It does. But it's like this. And I would never state it to them because that would be, you know, that level. But it's because I've been there. I've been that person, you know?
Well, I think that's almost more of empathy because you're like, shit, I know what this person's going through right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? The other piece of that is when you were talking about how, you know, people struggle when you let go and they say it's so hard. What they're really holding on to is a story. They're attached.
It's a story. Everything's a story.
They're attached to a story that they're not ready to let go of. And like you said, it's the version of themselves in that story too that they're not ready to let go of, you know? So it's like, it's crazy to witness that and be like, okay, they're not done playing that role.
And this happens to me as a reader 24/7. You know, I'm a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories all day long, right? And the collective, I can tell. And that's why I love working with the collective energy. You can just tell a story. But it really doesn't matter what I have to state. There's always going to be someone who resonates. This happens with everything, movies, music, things that you're in there. When you find that same thing, and that's what you're asking me, is the same thing. When it feels that, you're like, oh my God, spot on. That person knows so much about me, but that's actually you.
Yeah.
You know, it has nothing to do with me. So I always say I'm just the vessel. You know, you chose to be here. You chose to hear the message. But the stories I hear sometimes are fucking crazy. Yeah. And I'll be like, no one's going to resonate with this. And then that will be the one that blows up. And everyone's like, oh my gosh.
I know.
And I'm like, that's really crazy shit happening to you guys. You know, but
my favorite is when you're like, you message me, you're like, don't listen to Cancer's reading. It was so weird. And I was like,
oh, that was like,
I'm totally listening to this. And I listened to it and I got on there. I was like, that was totally my reading.
Well, because you energetically just went with it. Plus anything when I tell her not to do the red button, the girl is like, red button.
Red button. But
let me do it and hit it.
I had already gone through it, right? So it was validation for me. And
yeah, it was a validation reading for you.
And it was a couple of days after you said not to do it. And I saw it and I was like, oh, I bet you this is the one. Let me watch it. Even though she told me not to. Listen, the universe doesn't know the word no. And so this is why I wrote an article in 2017. It was like, stop telling your kids no, because if you say stop slamming the door, all they hear is slam the door. This is a proven universal thing. You have to speak an affirmation. There's a reason why this is a thing. And so when you hear this, it clicks. And I actually tested it helping Ashley with her kids this weekend or this past 3 weeks. But if you say close the door softly, then they'll do that. But if you say stop slamming the door, all they hear is
slamming the door. Yeah.
Don't think of elephants. What are you thinking of right now? Elephants. You know what I mean? So
it really is awareness. It's awareness. So I was like, it's 100%.
I gotta watch the reading, and it was totally my reading, so I had no regrets over it.
Well, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, there's one thing we are a little bit over, but if there's one thing, if we can pull this back, which is we're talking about the gambles of life and relationships. I do want to leave us with the last Kenny Rogers line, which is because every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser. And what's the last line? And the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep.
Hell yeah, please.
That's right. That is something that it's like, well, at least if we have that, we have the advice here of Kenny Rogers.
Yeah. I love Kenny.
All right. Well, next time, Johanna, sending you lots of love.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Well, this has been fun. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when we are live.